Right now, it is 7:10 on Breakfast. One of the hot topics of the election this year is housing. How do we boost supply and make housing more affordable? Often in an election year, house sales drop pre-election as people wait to find out who will get into government and whether their policies will make a change. You can see here that in 2014, in the red, nationwide sales were down on average of 8% per month during the period of the election being announced. As you can see here in March through to the September election, before picking up again and looking more similar to the years either side of it. This is happening similarly this election. In July last year, houses were selling in fairly large numbers, but compare that to July this year, house sales are down by more than 50%. And the majority of that drop took place when the election was announced in February. So what's likely to happen to the market post-election if Labour was to become the new government, in comparison to if National remains in government? Property Institute of New Zealand CEO Ashley Church is with us on this morning. Tēnā koe, Ashley. Let's start off with the market as it stands at the moment. How quiet are sales?
Well, very quiet at the moment. So we can confirm, for example, that volumes across the country, Jack, have dropped dramatically over the last little while. Dwellings, for example, which is houses, they've dropped. They were selling 6,426 of those were selling per month in the 3 months between February and April 2017. That number, Jack, in the period between May and July 2017 has dropped to 3,297. So it's a pretty dramatic drop.
Does that mean it's a buyer's market?
Does mean it's a buyer's market, although, and this is a very big but to that, a very big caveat, it hasn't actually impacted on prices. So if you look at prices across the country over the last 12 months, the rolling 3-month median of sale prices across the country was 489,000 12 months ago. It's 480,000 now. So, I mean, that's statistical error stuff. There's virtually no difference. Auckland, much the same. 12 months ago, houses were selling for about 840,000, the median sales price. Now selling for 849. So very little difference in prices, big drop in volume.
What do you make of the two major parties, National and Labour's approach to housing supply?
Yeah, look, I think to be fair to both of them, and when you spend time talking with Phil Twyford or with Nick Smith, both of them are clearly committed to trying to fix this issue, but they've got very different approaches, and we would argue those approaches, in both cases, those approaches are somewhat lacking. What they're getting right is that both of them have recognised that consenting delays, urban boundary issues are causing delays in the construction of homes, and so they're both proposing policies to do things that will free those up and make it possible for people to get consents more quickly and to build houses more quickly. And they've both got strategies that treat the market as a composite, so that they can actually treat it as something that can be solved as an overall issue rather than on a case-by-case basis. The problem is that both of them, the solutions that they're proposing, we think aren't going to solve the problem on its own. So, for example, both National and Labour are recommending variations of something called an urban development strategy, which is essentially a really large authority that dominates the market and fixes it. And there are some real issues. There are some unintended consequences of that approach if you're not very, very careful. So we have some concerns around that approach. And the other one is that we think that they dramatically overestimate the role that the government and authority can play in solving this problem. If it's going to be fixed, it's going to be fixed primarily by the private sector.
Okay, apart from addressing those issues, what would be on your election wish list?
There's a few things in terms of fixing that issue. So the issues are around supply and affordability. Obviously, supply in Auckland's a really big issue, and that's resolved by getting private investors involved in the market. And there's two ways that you could do that, Jack, two obvious ways. The first of those is, and I hate to use this word because it's usually used by people who use it as an excuse to do nothing, but education. What I mean by that is that there are some features of the market already that we don't think people are aware of. For example, first-home buyers, if they build a new house, are exempt from those LVR rules. The bank can lend them more. They don't need 20% deposit. Property investors, same. They don't need that 40% deposit if they're building a new dwelling. Now, I don't think that's clearly understood by most of the market, and if it was, you may well have more take-up of people actually looking to build new properties rather than buying existing ones.
Let's look into the future. 6 months from now, what will be the difference in the market if National is in compared to if Labor is in?
Oh, I don't think there'll be a huge amount of difference. I think that the imposition of those LVRs and the rationing of credit by the banks at the moment is probably going to be a little bit of a handbrake on both. If there were to be a difference, it would be on the fringes. If there was a National-led government, I suspect you might see a little bit of confidence return to the market, so you may see a little bit of a blip. If there was a Labor-led government, I suspect that would be more muted, and there is concern around the implications of a capital gains tax.
Although Jacinda Ardern has ruled that out for the time being.
She's ruled it out immediately. What she's indicated, though, is that their tax working group could look at it, and if they look at it, that she's indicated that she would be prepared to look at introducing it within her first term. So that has a little bit of, a moderating influence. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for your time and insight this morning. That's Ashley Church from the Property Institute.